I found a hidden room behind my apartment wall. I wish I never opened it. I wasn't planning on staying in the apartment for more than 6 months. That was the deal I made with myself the day I signed the lease. The rent was almost suspiciously cheap, the building was older than my parents', and every hallway smelled like damp wood and bleach. It wasn't the kind of place you dreamed of living in. It was the kind of place you settled for when your savings account was almost empty and your landlord didn't ask too many questions. At the time, it felt like a lifeline. Looking back, I wish I'd slept in my car instead. The building sat at the end of a quiet street where almost every other apartment had been renovated except this one. The brick exterior was stained black in places, and ivy had wrapped itself around the fire escape like it had been trying to pull the whole structure into the ground. The landlord, Mr. Harrison, was an older man who looked permanently exhausted. He barely made eye contact when he handed me the keys. "The walls are old," he muttered. I laughed. "Old walls don't bother me." He hesitated. "They make noises. I've lived in apartments before." He nodded slowly. "These are different." That should have been the first warning. Instead, I thanked him and carried my boxes upstairs. Apartment 3B wasn't terrible. The kitchen was tiny, but everything worked. The bedroom had one window overlooking an abandoned parking lot. The living room was just big enough for a couch, a TV stand, and a small desk where I planned to work remotely. The walls were covered with several layers of cheap white paint. If you looked closely, you could see uneven patches beneath the surface, almost like someone had repaired holes over and over again. I noticed them, shrugged, and kept unpacking. The first 2 nights were completely normal. I slept well, worked during the day, ordered takeout, watched movies. Nothing unusual. Then, around 2:13 in the morning on the 3rd night, I woke up to a scratching sound. Not loud, just scratch, 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 like someone dragging their fingernails across drywall. I sat up in bed, listening. Silence. I checked my phone. 2:14 a.m. I figured it had to be mice. Old buildings always had mice. I rolled over and eventually fell asleep. The next night, 2:13 a.m. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Exactly the same. This time it lasted almost 30 seconds before stopping. I got out of bed. The sound had seemed close. Really close. I walked around the apartment barefoot, trying to figure out where it came from. Kitchen. Nothing. Bathroom. Nothing. Living room. Nothing. Then I stood beside the wall separating my bedroom from the apartment next door. I placed my hand against it. Cold. Much colder than the rest of the apartment. The scratching stopped. I waited another minute. Nothing. Eventually, I convinced myself it had been inside the wall. Probably rats. The next morning, I mentioned it to one of the tenants downstairs while checking my mail. She was an elderly woman named Linda. "You hear scratching too?" she asked before I even finished explaining. I smiled. "So it is rats." Her expression didn't change. "I never said that." I laughed awkwardly. She didn't. Instead, she folded her newspaper. "What apartment?" 3B. She stared at me for a few seconds longer than felt comfortable. "Oh. Just. Oh." Then she walked away. No explanation. No goodbye. Nothing. That night, I bought mousetraps. Expensive ones. I put 3 in the bedroom, 2 in the kitchen, 1 near the bathroom. The scratching started at exactly 2:13 again. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Except this time, it moved. Slowly. Like whatever was making the sound was crawling inside the wall. Around my bedroom. I could actually follow it. The scratching traveled from one corner, across the wall, then stopped right behind the headboard of my bed. I held my breath. Nothing. 5 seconds. 10. 20. Then, 3 slow knocks. Tap, tap, tap. Not scratching. Knocking. From inside the wall. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By sunrise, I'd convinced myself there had to be pipes or old plumbing making weird noises. There had to be. The mousetraps were untouched. Not one had gone off. The following afternoon, I decided to introduce myself to my neighbor. Apartment 3A. If anyone knew what was inside those walls, it'd be the person living on the other side. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Nothing. As I turned to leave, the apartment door across the hallway opened. A middle-aged man peeked out. "You looking for Daniel?" "I guess so." He moved. "Oh, about 8 months ago." I frowned. "So, who's living there now?" The man looked confused. "No one." I stared at him. "But I hear someone." He shrugged. "Been empty since Daniel disappeared." Disappeared? The man immediately looked like he'd said too much. I shouldn't have said that. What happened? No idea. He just vanished. I said I don't know. He closed his door before I could ask another question. I stood there for almost a minute. Apartment 3A. Empty. That couldn't be right. I heard footsteps over there almost every evening. Not many. Just enough to remind me someone was home. Furniture moving. A chair scraping. The occasional thud. I figured whoever lived there was just quiet. Apparently. Nobody did. That night I tried something different. Instead of sleeping in the bedroom, I dragged my couch into the living room. If the scratching came from the bedroom wall again, I'd record it. At exactly 2:13, it started. Scratch. 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 I grabbed my phone and opened the camera. The microphone barely picked it up. Then, the sound stopped. I waited. Silence. Maybe it was over. Then, a loud crack echoed through the apartment. I nearly dropped my phone. It had come from the bedroom. I slowly walked toward the doorway. Everything looked normal, until I noticed something on the floor. White dust. Fresh. Directly beneath the wall behind my bed. A thin crack had appeared in the paint. It hadn't been there before. It stretched vertically from the baseboard to about waist height, only a few inches long, but it was definitely new. I touched it. The paint flaked away instantly. More white dust fell onto the floor. Behind the layer of paint, the drywall looked different, uneven, almost like another wall had been built directly behind the first one. I told myself I'd deal with it after work the next day. Maybe maintenance had covered up old damage. Maybe the building had settled. There was probably a completely reasonable explanation. I went back to the couch, turned off the lights, and tried to ignore the uneasy feeling crawling across my skin. At 2:47 a.m., I heard it again. Not scratching, not knocking, a whisper, so quiet I thought I imagined it. It came from the bedroom. One sentence, just 6 words. Don't let it know you're awake. I froze. Every hair on my body stood up. The apartment fell completely silent. Then, from inside the wall, something knocked back. Once, twice, 3 times. Slowly, as if answering whoever had just whispered to me. I didn't move. I don't mean I was too scared to move. I mean my body simply refused. Every instinct I had screamed that if I made even the smallest sound, something on the other side of that wall would know exactly where I was. The apartment was silent. Not normal silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air itself is waiting. I stared toward my bedroom doorway, trying to convince myself I'd imagined the whisper. Maybe I'd been half asleep. Maybe my brain had mixed the scratching with a dream. Then I heard it. A slow inhale. Not mine. Someone else's. From the bedroom. I held my own breath. The sound came again. A deep, shaky inhale, followed by an equally slow exhale. There was someone in there. Or something. I reached for my phone without taking my eyes off the doorway. 2:49 a.m. I opened the camera again and pointed it toward the bedroom. The room looked empty. Just my bed. My dresser. The cracked wall behind the headboard. Nothing else. But the breathing hadn't stopped. I zoomed in. Still nothing. Then my phone's autofocus suddenly shifted. Not to the wall. Not to the bed. To the darkness underneath the bed frame. The screen sharpened. For a split second, I thought I saw 2 tiny reflections. Like eyes. I blinked. They were gone. I wasn't about to check. I quietly backed toward my apartment door, unlocked it as slowly as I could, and stepped into the hallway. Only then did I realize how hard my heart was pounding. I knocked on the apartment across from mine. No answer. I knocked again. Nothing. The hallway lights flickered once. Then the elevator dinged. The doors slid open. An elderly man stepped out carrying a grocery bag. He looked at me standing barefoot in the hallway. "You okay?" "I think someone's inside my apartment." He frowned. "You call the police?" Not yet." He looked toward my door. "You hear the wall?" I stared at him. "What?" "The wall. The scratching." He sighed. "So it finally started." "Finally? What do you mean finally?" Instead of answering, he slowly walked past me and looked at the number on my apartment door. 3B. His shoulders dropped. "Oh." He whispered it almost to himself. "You need to leave." "What?" "You shouldn't stay there." "Why?" He looked around the hallway before leaning closer. "Because every tenant who stays in that apartment long enough starts hearing someone inside the walls." I laughed nervously. "No, seriously." "I am serious." He wasn't smiling. "They all think it's rats." "What happened to them?" He hesitated. "Some moved." "And the others?" He looked directly into my eyes. "They disappeared." The elevator doors closed behind him. He never answered another question. He simply walked into his apartment and locked the door. I didn't sleep. I sat in my car until sunrise. By morning, I'd convinced myself I was letting ghost stories get into my head. Old buildings had rumors. People exaggerated. There had to be a logical explanation. So after grabbing coffee, I stopped by a hardware store. I bought a flashlight, a stud finder, a small pry bar, a hammer. If there really was another wall behind the drywall, I wanted to know why. Back at the apartment, I stood in front of the crack behind my bed. In daylight, it looked harmless, almost embarrassing, like I'd overreacted to a tiny cosmetic crack. Still, I ran the stud finder across the wall. The machine beeped. Normally, you'd expect wooden studs every 16 inches. This wasn't normal. The entire section behind my bed registered as solid, from floor to ceiling. No gaps, no studs, just solid, almost like there was concrete behind it. Except when I knocked. It sounded hollow. That made no sense. I grabbed the pry bar. "One peek," I muttered. "If it's plumbing, I'll stop." The paint peeled away surprisingly easily. Chunks of drywall crumbled onto the floor. Within minutes, I'd opened a hole about the size of a dinner plate. Behind it, another wall. Exactly like I'd suspected. Only this wall wasn't drywall. It was old wooden planks. Dark, warped, covered in scratches. Thousands of scratches. Some long, some short, some so deep they had nearly carved through the wood. I ran my fingers across one of them. Something about the marks made my stomach turn. They weren't random. They were all vertical, as if someone had clawed downward. Again, and again, and again, trying desperately to get out. My phone buzzed. The sudden vibration made me jump. It was my landlord. "Everything okay?" I stared at the message. I hadn't told him anything. I hadn't called. I hadn't complained. How did he know something was wrong? Before I could answer, another message appeared. "Do not open the wall." I froze. A minute later, another text. "I'm coming upstairs." I quickly shoved my bed back against the damaged wall. A loud knock came almost immediately. Too fast. He couldn't have driven over that quickly. He had already been in the building. When I opened the door, Mr. Harrison looked unusually pale. His eyes immediately darted toward the bedroom. "You opened it." It wasn't a question, just a little. He walked past me without asking permission. When he reached the bedroom, he stopped. For a long time, he just stared at the cracked drywall. Then he whispered something I couldn't quite hear. "I'm sorry." I frowned. "What?" He looked exhausted. "You need to patch this." "Why?" "Because if you make the opening bigger..." He swallowed hard. "It notices." I stared at him. What notices? He ignored the question. Instead, he handed me a roll of thick grey tape. Cover the crack. I'm not covering anything until you tell me what's going on. He sighed. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. He looked toward the wall again, then quietly said, Years ago, there wasn't just one apartment here. I waited. There were two. What happened? They remodeled. So, they built over something they couldn't remove. A chill ran through me. What couldn't they remove? Before he could answer, 3 loud bangs exploded from inside the wooden wall. Boom, boom, boom. Not scratching, not knocking. These sounded like someone slamming both fists against the wood. Mr. Harrison's face lost all color. He backed away immediately. Cover it. What is that? Cover it. It was the first time I'd heard him raise his voice. The banging stopped. Complete silence returned. He left without another word. I stood there staring at the damaged wall. Then I noticed something I was absolutely certain hadn't been there before. Between 2 of the scratches, someone had carved letters into the wood. Tiny, almost impossible to notice. I wiped away decades of dust. There were only 4 words. It hears your thoughts. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my brain refused to process what I was looking at. Someone had written that. Probably years ago. Maybe decades. I pulled out my phone and searched the apartment's address. Nothing unusual came up. Just rental listings. An old tax record. Then I searched the building's address with 1 extra word. Missing. Hundreds of results. Most were unrelated. Until I found a local newspaper archive. The headline stopped me cold. Local man vanishes from apartment building without a trace. The address matched mine. Apartment 3B. The article included 1 blurry photo. The missing tenant smiled at the camera, holding a set of apartment keys. I recognized him instantly. It was the same man I'd seen, standing at my bedroom window the previous night. Only now I realized something impossible. The article was dated 1998, and according to the police report, no one had ever found his body. I read the article 3 times before it finally sank in. The man in the photograph had been missing for almost 30 years. Yet I had seen him. Not in a dream. Not in the corner of my eye. I had seen his reflection standing at my bedroom window while I was recording the room. I rushed back into the camera roll on my phone. The video from the previous night was still there. I skipped ahead to the moment where I thought I'd seen someone. Nothing. Just my empty bedroom. I watched it again. Still nothing. Then, just as I was about to close it, the audio crackled. A faint voice whispered through the speaker. Don't watch the room. I frowned. That wasn't what I'd heard. The night before, I was certain the whisper had been, don't let it know you're awake. I replayed it. This time the voice said something else. It's behind you. A chill ran through me. I spun around. The apartment was empty. When I looked back at my phone, the audio had ended. No breathing. No whisper. Just static. I uploaded the clip to an online audio enhancement site, hoping it would make the voice clearer. While it processed, I decided to search the rest of the apartment. Every closet. Every cabinet. Every vent. Nothing. Then I noticed something strange in the hallway outside my front door. The dusty wooden floor had a trail of footprints. Bare footprints. They started at the staircase, walked directly to my apartment, stopped at my door, and never continued. No footprints leading away. As if whoever had walked there had simply entered without opening the door. I backed into my apartment and locked every lock. Then I checked the enhanced audio. The software had isolated the whisper. I turned up the volume. A woman's voice. Weak. Almost crying. Don't answer it. My phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at the screen. It rang 6 times. Stopped. Then immediately rang again. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello. Silence. Just static. Then, a man's voice. Quiet. Panicked. If you're in 3B. His breathing became shaky. Leave before 2:13. The call ended. I tried calling back. The number didn't exist. That evening, I drove to the local library. If the internet wasn't giving me answers, maybe old newspaper archives would. An older librarian helped me find a collection of local papers dating back decades. I searched the building's address. There were far more articles than I'd expected. Not 1, not 5, 23. Missing tenants. Unexplained disappearances. Police investigations. Every case ended the same way. No signs of forced entry. No body. No suspect. The victims had simply vanished. Then I found something the online archive didn't include. A handwritten note attached to one of the newspaper clippings. It looked like someone from the library had taped it there years ago. It read, "Police stopped investigating after they realized every witness described hearing scratching inside the walls before the disappearances." Below that, another sentence. "Apartment 3B has been renovated 7 times. 7. Why would one apartment need 7 renovations? Unless they weren't renovating. They were sealing something back up. On my way home, I stopped at a diner across the street from the apartment building. An elderly waitress noticed me staring out the window. "You live over there." I nodded. 3B. Her smile disappeared. "You should move." I've heard that a lot lately. She poured me another cup of coffee. My brother lived there. I looked up. What happened? He disappeared. My stomach tightened. When? 1998. I already knew the answer before I asked. What was his name? Daniel. The same name the neighbor had mentioned. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out an old photograph. It showed her standing beside a young man. He was smiling, holding a fishing rod. It was him, the man from the newspaper, the man I'd seen at my window. My brother kept saying someone was knocking from inside the walls, she said softly. Nobody believed him. She hesitated before continuing. The day before he vanished. He told me the wall had started knocking back. I barely noticed the drive home. My mind replayed every conversation I'd had since moving in. The landlord, the neighbors, the scratching, the whisper. It all pointed to one thing. Whatever was inside that wall wasn't trapped. It was waiting. That night I decided I wasn't sleeping. I made coffee, turned on every light, set up my phone to record the bedroom. Another phone recorded the hallway. My laptop recorded the living room. If something happened, I'd have proof. At exactly 2:12 a.m., everything went silent. Even the refrigerator stopped humming. The apartment felt dead. Then, 2:13. 3 knocks. Tap, tap, tap. The wall answered itself. Tap, tap, tap. Another 3 knocks echoed. From somewhere deeper inside. Like there were 2 different people communicating. Then came the scratching. Only this time. It wasn't inside the wall. It was behind me. I turned. Nothing. The scratching continued. Slowly. Moving across my living room ceiling. Dragging itself toward the bedroom. I watched in horror as a thin crack spread across the ceiling paint. Following the sound, dust drifted onto the floor. The crack stopped directly above my bedroom door. Then something impossible happened. The bedroom door slowly closed by itself. Click. The scratching stopped. My cameras were still recording. I forced myself to walk toward the bedroom. Every instinct screamed not to. My hand shook as I reached for the doorknob. I opened it. The room looked normal. Until I saw the wall. The hole I'd made earlier was gone. Completely gone. Fresh drywall. Fresh paint. As if I'd never broken it open. I stood frozen. Then I noticed words slowly appearing on the white paint. Not written. Pressed outward from beneath the surface. Letter by letter. As though invisible fingers were pushing them through the wall. You opened the wrong wall. The room became ice cold. Before I could react, something struck the other side of the wall so hard that the entire bedroom shook. Boom. A second impact. Boom. A third. The light bulb exploded above me. The room went black. In the darkness, I heard dozens of voices whispering at once. Not screaming, not crying, whispering my name. Over, and over, and over again. Then one voice rose above all the others. Calm, almost amused. Now, you know we are awake. I don't remember leaving the bedroom. 1 second I was standing in complete darkness, listening to dozens of voices whisper my name. The next, I was on the living room floor, gasping for air. My phone lay a few feet away. The screen was cracked. The recording was still running. I grabbed it with trembling hands and rewound the last few minutes. I expected to see myself standing in the bedroom, staring at the wall. Instead, the video showed something else. At exactly 2:13 a.m., I walked into the bedroom. Then I froze. For almost 2 full minutes, I stood perfectly still, facing the wall. I didn't move. I didn't blink. Then, slowly, I smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a relieved smile. A wide, unnatural grin. One I have never made in my life. I watched in horror as the version of me on the screen tilted his head and whispered something directly at the camera. There was no audio, just my lips moving. Then, without warning, the recording cut to static. My blood ran cold. I had no memory of any of it. At sunrise, I packed a backpack with the essentials. Laptop, wallet, passport, a few clothes. I wasn't staying another night. I didn't care about the lease anymore. I walked downstairs and found Mr. Harrison sitting alone in the lobby. It looked like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw the backpack, he nodded. "You're leaving." I should have left the first night. "You should have. So why didn't you tell me?" He looked at the floor. Because nobody believes the truth until it's too late. I slammed my apartment keys onto his desk. "Then tell me now." He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. The building wasn't always an apartment. What was it? A boarding house. He swallowed hard. In 1968, a contractor found a narrow room hidden between 2 walls during renovations. My stomach tightened. They thought someone had accidentally sealed it shut years before. What was inside? His hands began to shake. People. I felt sick. What? They found 6 bodies. The lobby suddenly felt colder. The room had no doors. No windows. No way in. I stared at him. How is that possible? They never figured it out. He continued. Workers demolished the room. But strange things started happening almost immediately. Voices. Scratching. Disappearances. So they rebuilt the walls. They thought sealing it again would stop whatever had escaped. It didn't. I walked out of the building without saying another word. I checked into a motel 20 miles away. For the first time in weeks. I thought I was safe. That night, I ordered takeout, turned on the TV, and tried to forget everything. At exactly 2:13 a.m., 3 knocks came from the wall beside my bed. Tap, tap, tap. My heart stopped. No. I whispered. Another 3 knocks answered from somewhere deeper inside the wall. Tap, tap, tap. I left the motel before sunrise. Over the next 3 weeks, I stayed in 4 different hotels. A friend's guest room. Even slept in my car. It didn't matter. Every night. 2:13. 3 knocks. Always from inside the wall nearest my bed. No matter where I went. Whatever I'd disturbed had followed me. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I dreamed about a narrow hallway made entirely of old wood. There were no lights. Just endless walls. Covered with scratch marks. And every dream ended the same way. Someone would whisper, "We are almost through." Desperate, I contacted the sister of the missing man Daniel, the waitress from the diner. She agreed to meet me after closing. When I told her everything, she didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I finished, she reached beneath the counter and placed an old cassette recorder on the table. My brother mailed this to me the day before he disappeared. She had never listened to it all the way through. Neither had I. Until that night. The tape began with Daniel speaking normally. He described the scratching, the whispers, the hidden wooden wall. Everything matched my experience. Then, about 20 minutes into the recording, his voice changed. He sounded terrified. I found another opening. Heavy breathing. They're not trapped. A loud bang interrupted him. Then came scratching. Closer than before. Daniel whispered, "Oh God. They've been pretending to be stuck." Silence. Then, a voice that wasn't Daniel's. Perfectly calm. Perfectly clear. "Thank you for opening the door." The tape ended with one final sound. 3 slow knocks. I realized something then. The whispers. The knocking. The hidden room. None of it had been trying to scare people away. It had been doing the opposite. It wanted someone curious enough to keep digging, to break the wall, to make an opening. I hadn't discovered the hidden room. I'd been guided to it. The next morning, I drove back to the apartment building. Not to move back in. To end it. Firefighters and demolition crews arrived after I anonymously reported a gas leak. Within hours, the building was evacuated. By evening, the first excavator struck the side of the building. The outer brick wall collapsed. Dust filled the air. Workers suddenly stopped. One of them began shouting. Then another. Police cars arrived. The entire site was taped off. I watched from across the street. They had found another room, hidden inside the walls, exactly where Mr. Harrison had described. Except, it wasn't empty. There were fresh footprints in the dust. Only one set, leading into the room. None leading back out. The police searched for 2 days. They found nothing. No bodies. No suspects. Just walls, covered from floor to ceiling, with thousands upon thousands of scratches. The building was demolished a week later. Every brick, every beam, every wall, gone. For the first time in over a month, I slept through the night. No knocks, no whispers, no scratching. I thought it was finally over. I was wrong. A month later, I moved into a brand new apartment on the other side of the state. New building, concrete walls, no shared spaces, no history. On the first night, I slept peacefully. On the second, I woke up at exactly 2:13 a.m. Not because of a noise, because my phone vibrated. It was a notification from the cloud storage account where my old apartment videos had been backed up. The app said, "One new video uploaded." I frowned. I hadn't uploaded anything. My hand shook as I opened it. The video had been recorded just seconds earlier. The camera angle looked familiar. Too familiar. It was my bedroom. Not the one in my new apartment. The old one. Apartment 3B. The room was empty. The hidden wall stood untouched. The timestamp read today's date. Then, someone walked into frame. It wasn't me. It wasn't Daniel. It wasn't anyone I'd ever seen before. The person looked directly into the camera, smiled, and slowly pointed behind it, as if someone was standing where the camera was. The screen turned black. A single line of audio played. A voice I recognized immediately. The same whisper that had warned me on my first night. Only this time, it sounded defeated. "I'm sorry. It followed you."